You know, it's funny, I've been reading the Bible for quite a few years, and I actually have to confess that I haven't really liked Ecclesiastes because it's depressing. When a guy uses the word meaningless 35 times, it's depressing. And it's interesting, if you've been tracking with us, we have just covered the book of Proverbs, the book of Job, and now we're in the book of Ecclesiastes. And Job kind of came at us like an old weathered man. The whole genre, the feel of Job was this old guy who had lived through a lot and still clung to his faith. The book of Proverbs came at us like a woman, Lady Wisdom, who tried to keep us from making terrible mistakes, from making bad decisions. The book of Ecclesiastes comes at you like a man in midlife crisis. That's a pretty thing to see. We've all seen it, right? Somebody in midlife crisis, they've done a lot, they've seen a lot, and they're realizing that that's not going to carry them through to the end. And so in our culture, it kind of looks like a different hair or new jewelry or different clothes, and all of it's a little awkward, right? You know what I'm talking about. And but beyond the superficial is a cynicism of heart that says life is meaningless.
The interesting about the book, he's not preaching the gospel. It's not about, you going to heaven or hell or something like that. But it's him, this man who has accomplished everything in life. It's one thing you're talking to a person that never accomplished anything, and then he look and say, yeah, everything is not worth it because I never have. But if you're talking to a person that he accomplished everything, you're going to read, as you read, you will see, he was like, I had everything the man could think about. But the question that he lead us to is that God really matters in everything you accomplish. That was the point of this man, is not about accomplish, it's not right or wrong accomplish things. It is what happened if God is not in the picture.
So the word meaningless is how your New International probably would put it. If you're reading an old New King James or a King James, the word they would use is vanity. Vanity, everything is vanity. In the Hebrew, the best translation really is the word smoke or vapor. This is the word hevel. It's smoke. Everything is smoke or vapor. And smoke is funny, right? Because smoke sometimes appears to have form, but when you go to get your hand around it, it just sort of dissipates. You can't quite get a grip on it. This is the word he's using over and over again. It's smoke. It looks real. It looks like you can touch it. It looks like it has substance, but it escapes your grasp. And so what he's going to do is he's going to take on four things in the passages. We're going to go 12 chapters in the next 20 minutes. Watch, here we go. He's going to take on four things, and he's going to look at them, and he's going to draw a conclusion. And these are four things that I think every culture you see all around us. This is one of the reasons I love the Word of God, and I believe in its authenticity. What other book could you do that has been relative for 3,000 years? And as we read this morning, you're going to see, oh yeah, I see that today. The first one he goes after, the first one he addresses, these are the pursuits of the heart, is pleasure. He said, so I said to myself, come now. He says to his heart, I will test you with pleasure to find out what is good. But that also proved to be meaningless. And then in verse 4 he says, chapter 2, so I undertook great projects. And this isn't about projects for project's sakes. We're going to get to that. But this is about pleasure. I built houses for myself. I planted vineyards. I made gardens, parks, and planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made reservoirs to water groves of flourishing trees. I bought male and female slaves and had other slaves who were born in my house. I also owned more herds and flocks than anyone in Jerusalem before me. We don't do that today. We just have garages full of stuff. I owned more cars and boats and so forth than anyone before me. I amassed silver and gold for myself and the treasure of kings and provinces. I acquired male and female singers and a harem as well, all the delights of a man's heart. I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all my labor, and this was the reward for all my toil. Yet when I surveyed all that my hands had done and what I'd toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. Isn't that just dark? It's like, dude. Well, it doesn't get better. Hang on.
If you were married, you were going to agree with me. Have you but have you insist in something you need to buy, you want it, you need it, and then it's there. Somewhere where your wife look at you, it's like, you spend money on that? Do you know? And this is what he's talking about. I never say no to my heart when he wants things. And he fights for. And then he's looking and say, it's meaningless. No, I fight for something. And it is interesting because if God is not in the picture, never the word enough, it's going to be enough. Because we always, it's our nature. We want one more thing. You know, the Apple released the S, and then next year they go the X Plus. It was like, ugh. And then it's like you get the X Plus, and then they say 7 is coming in September. No, it's like, oh, when are they gonna say it's enough? The second thing he mentioned here is he goes to pleasure, and then he goes and he said in chapter 2, verse 12, he goes to wisdom. He said, then I turned my thought to consider wisdom, and also madness and folly. Right word?
You got it.
Yeah. Yesterday I say fully. I'm sorry, I'm second language. I mess up with the whole teaching. Yeah. So what more can the king's successor do than what is already been done? I show that wisdom is better than folly. Just as light is better than darkness, then the wise have eyes in their heads, while the fool walk in darkness. But I came to realize that the same fate overtakes them both. Then I say to myself, the fate of the fool will overtake me also. What then do I gain by being wise? I say to myself, this too is meaningless. It is interesting because here he starts to say that one thing that it's death will take it all. It doesn't matter how wise, how much you have gained. There will be a time that death will say, it's a time now.
This is an interesting distinction, and this is where we have to listen carefully. If I was just to read this superficially, I would think that he's saying that it's just foolish, it's meaningless to even pursue wisdom, but that's not what he's saying. What he's saying now, he's making a transition that we need to catch. What he's saying is that there's a culprit here, and death and time are those culprits. That what he's saying is it doesn't matter, in a sense, if all we're gathering for is this life. That's where it becomes meaningless. Because death and time will pry everything, and he means everything, out of your hands. Daniel was just talking about just never having enough. Come on, we see this everywhere, don't we? I mean, just everywhere. Whether that's the body you're pursuing, or the income you're pursuing, or the house, or the yard, or the whatever. There's always going to be another season that's going to leave you thinking, oh, now I just need a little bit more. So the third thing he goes after is career and honor. I hated all the things I'd toiled for under the sun, because I must leave them to the one who comes after me. So now he's speaking to this businessman who has accomplished great things. Who knows whether that person coming behind me, who's going to get all the stuff, who's going to get my inheritance, will be wise or foolish. Yet they will have control over all the fruit of my toil, which I've poured my effort and skill under the sun. This too is meaningless. So my heart began to despair over all my toilsome labor under the sun. For a person may labor with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, that's me, and then he has to leave it all to another who's not worked for it. This too is meaningless and a great misfortune. And what you hear him saying is time and death take it all. The word there he uses, my heart began to despair, is significant. The word despair in the original means to be without hope. All of a sudden, he said, I find my heart being without hope. Listen, despair is the mark of midlife crisis. The reason it's a crisis is because, now listen carefully here, youth and strength and wealth mask the sense of death and time. Listen, when you're 19 and 20 and you are filled with testosterone or whatever it is that fuels your body, when you have lots of money and disposable income, when you feel like you have all the time in the world, let's be honest, who thinks about death and eternity? We have this sense of immortality. I can bench press. You fill in the blank, right? Your skin is tight and tanned, and your energy level is high, and you can stay up till 3 in the morning and go to work at 7. Remember those days? You just felt like you were a little bit invincible. That's why your insurance was so high, by the way. Because you had tons of energy, not so much experience. And this is what he's speaking to. That at some point, all that stuff, even my youth, will be pried out of my hands. It's interesting, we did a series here with a life group we finished up in the spring. And Andy Stanley said something that stuck with us. He said, everybody has to trust God in death. You don't have a choice. When you're dying, you're not going to say, pull the beamer up one more time or pull up my stocks one more time. There's no comfort in that. There's no consolation in that. When I'm around people that are dying, they call out for God. And what this writer is saying is, call out for God now. Inject eternity into your life now. And the last one.
Or even when he talks about career and honor, and it's also a decision we can make. Because when we will also be enough, even in this place. I was reading this and I was talking to my wife. We've been missionaries for over 20 years. And in the past, before we moved here, we were in Africa. And we was doing so well. We digging water well for families. And we were like 1,000 kids. We were feeding every day. And it was so well, like to tell people how successful we were doing. So we came here to Salem to learn, to be here for a year or almost 2 years for learning the ropes course and bring to Africa because we want to add one more thing to a very successful ministry we were doing. And then we realized, because I was gone out of the year, 6 months of the year traveling with teams and pastors to villages, and my family was not doing well. And I remember my daughter, she was having problems, and I wasn't paying attention on that. And I remember the day here, she looked at me, she said, I'm not going back to Africa. And then she lists the things that she never told us. And then it was, inside of me, it was like, I have this ministry, everything there. And my daughter and my family, where it's going to be enough to, which one do I choose? And I remember going to counseling, and what really changed my mind, it was the person that was counseling me, and he asked the question. He said, 100 people can do what you do in a ministry, even better than you. But just one person can do what your kids need, and that's you. And then I told him, you'd never ask me any more questions. I'm done with questions. And because he made me think. And the second question a person asked me was, why God gave Julia to you, for you to change her for a ministry, or to be her father? And then it's interesting. The ministry, it's gone, and the same way it came and gone, and my daughter is still here with me, and she's alive, she's healthy. So it's a question we have to make. That death we will take, but also there will be a time where even our kids will be gone, and they will grow up. Like we say now, it's 3 more years. She's gone for college or something. And the fourth one here, it talks about wealth and possession. In chapter 5, verse 10 and to the 15, he says, whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth, it's never satisfied with their income. This is too meaningless. As goods increase, so those who consume them. And what benefit are they to the owners except to the feast their eyes on them? The sleep of the labor is sweet, whether they eat little or much. But as for the rich, their abundance permits them no sleep. I have seen a grievous evil under the sun, wealth honored to them harm of its own. It's interesting because then he say, as much as you have, as much as trouble you're going to have. And he's not saying it's wrong to have it. But he's talking about the balance. And I remember in 2009 when the crisis came in the world, you guys probably remember too. And I remember reading a story about the person. He just got $2 million from his company as a reward from the sales of the year. This was like in December. In January, this guy committed suicide. And the note that he left, it was because of finances crisis. It was like, God, I don't even know what to do with $2 million. And this guy was like, it was not enough. It was enough for him to take his life off.
You remember the days when you just had, like back in the day, I had this just beater old Chevelle. And it was so cool because when I went into a grocery store or something, I just leave the windows open. You want to steal it? Take it, man. Nothing in there. Go ahead. It was like a freeing feeling, right? I got nothing to lose here. It's a 64 Chevelle. It's all beat up. But he's saying, wealth. Now you're going to be up at night. Again, what Daniel says is very important, that he's not against it. The whole book here is really about perspective. Is he just being cynical? Because listen, the fact is, pleasure and possessions and career and wealth, that's what makes our world go round, and that's not all bad. God gives us the ability to create wealth. What he's talking about here is this question we posed at the beginning: does God matter in the midst of it all? And so there's 2 takeaways we'd like to leave you. One of them is this: I think we have to live the life that God has given us. What I mean by that is, it's God who gives us all things richly to enjoy. So here's a passage. He talks about this in verse 9. Now listen to the sweet and the savory here. Go eat your food with gladness. Drink your wine with a joyful heart. For God has already approved what you do. There's the sweet. Be clothed in white and always anoint your head with oil. Enjoy life with your wife, whom you love, all the days of this meaningless life. What? That God has given you under the sun all your meaningless days. For this is your lot in life, and in your toilsome labor under the sun. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. For in the realm of the dead where you're going, there's neither working, nor planning, nor knowledge, nor wisdom, nor beauty, nor chocolate, nor sexuality. All those things are going to end at the grave. We've all seen pictures of the pyramids in Egypt. We've seen pictures of people trying to take wealth and beauty and so forth to the grave with them, and it can't get beyond the grave. What he's saying is live it now, but live it to the glory of God. That's the secret here. That's the message of Ecclesiastes. It is God who has given us life, and when we recognize He's the author of life, we live it well. But sometimes we think that God is like anti-life. God is anti-pleasure, anti-success, anti-money, anti-career. Nothing could be further from the truth. Look. You know what that is? It's 3 inches of tongue. You know what's on the surface of that tongue? 10,000 taste buds. 10,000 taste buds that give me the ability to differentiate between pizza and hot chocolate, a good cup of coffee in 7-Eleven, cream brulee and prime rib. 10,000 taste buds, and they change. They renew themselves every 2 weeks. Man, let your mind run on that for a while. What kind of God would do that? He didn't have to do that. He could have made it just, hey, it's all dog food. Just all tastes the same. You get the same things 24/7. But God gave you and I nerve endings, color, texture, sight, sound, beauty, so that we would live life well and enjoy life. 1 Timothy says, command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with what? Everything for our enjoyment. And command them to be good. Notice he doesn't say command them to give away all their wealth, command them to wear sackcloth and ashes, command them to cover themselves from head to toe, command them to never smile, never listen to music, never enjoy food, never enjoy. No, he says, no, just command them to be good, to be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. He's saying live your life, but just live it well, live it with God in mind.
Imagine a person that he don't believe and he don't even accept the fact that God exists, and he sits on the sunset. And for me, this is one of the most beautiful things. When we live in South Africa, I live close to a mountain, and every day I have around probably like 500 pictures. And you will see the sunrise and the sunset. They're never the same. And he's not able to thank anyone for that. That is sad. And when I looked at the sunset, I was like, God, you are amazing. You could keep this for yourself, but you share it to us. You know, the beauty. And this is what he wants us to do, to recognize him, to have him in every moment of our life. And that we will say, then life matters. Then everything we accomplish, it will matter because of him being the source of everything.
Have you ever watched a sunset? I mean, really sad. I mean, a special time. You know what I mean? You're on vacation, you're on a honeymoon, you're on a getaway, and you just happen to catch it. The weather is warm, the breeze is warm, the colors are extraordinary, and you just sit there with someone you care about, or maybe you're alone, but when you watch it, as it's going down, have you ever had that sense of longing, like, oh, I wish I could just freeze this moment. I wish this could go on. But it doesn't, right? You've got about 12 minutes, and then it just, boom, and gray. You know what that is? Those are your longings. Think about this with me. Have you ever had a sense of something that was almost otherworldly, and you just wished it could go on? The love of a friend, a true friend, the love of a married couple, an act of kindness, even a symphony or a movie that moves you deeply. And there's this weird, you can't quite get your mind or wrap your mind around, what do I feel right now? I have this sense of, oh, I wish this could continue. And it can't. And there's a sense of frustration there. I think everybody can relate to what I'm saying here. You know what that is? That's the echo of eternity in your hearts. Because in the garden, what was broken was fellowship with the author of those sunsets and those nerve endings and that beauty and that wonder. And sin has broken that connection. And so we have a creation that we live in where death has been injected, and it was never meant to be. But the longing remains. That's what's amazing. I want to say that again. Death has interrupted all those things. That's what he's saying. It's made those things without a view of eternity. It's made these things that are meant to bless us. It makes us now curse those things. It makes them meaningless. The echo is still there, the echo of eternity. But guess what? If I take God out of the picture, if I take eternity out of the picture, now I'm angry at this sunset. Now I'm skeptical of true love. Now I'm insecure about your feelings because you feel like this just can't last. I know it won't last. You're right. It wasn't meant to last in the natural. It was meant to be fulfilled in eternity. Listen to what C.S. Lewis says. The books or the music in which we thought the beauty was located will betray us if we trust in them. Listen carefully to what he's saying here. This is incredibly profound. But it was not in them, it only came through them. And what came through them was longing. These things we feel, the beauty, the memory of our own past, are good images of what we really desire, but if they are mistaken for the thing itself, they turn into dumb idols, breaking the hearts of their worshipers. For if they are not the thing itself, they are only the scent of a flower we have not found, the echo of a tune we have not heard, news from a country we have never yet visited. You hear what he's describing there? He's describing the crux of the issue. If I take eternity out of my life, I will make an idol out of those things that I see that touch my heart. Relationships without God, male-female relationships, can be idolatrous because you're looking for something in that individual that ultimately only God can fulfill. That beauty you seek, that security of wealth, that accomplishment you seek, without God, they cannot help but become idols because the hope of eternity that should be placed in God has been placed in these things, and they become, like C.S. Lewis said, dumb idols. They can't speak. They can't comfort. They have no power to carry us through to eternity.
It's in one of the verse, he mentioned that God puts eternity in the hearts of the men. And that is the answer. If the eternity is in our hearts, and we are not supposed to just stay in our minds here, and it's not to be there all the time thinking like, oh, when Jesus come back or when I die, then I'm gonna leave. No, it's live in a way that you're gonna affect the eternity. No, and I like to drive. When I'm driving, the other day I saw a very old house, and I looked to this house. Probably the house, it's about 100 years old, and I thought this house, when they were built the first time, probably it cost more than now, and because it's damaged and everything, and this is life. If you build a house today or in 100 years. You're not even going to be living there. But if you do things today that it's going to touch people's life, or even it's thinking about eternity, it's always going to be there. Do you know, just look to the life of the disciples of Jesus. If they have decided, say, do you know, this is so painful, let's not do it, we may not be sitting here. Or even the person who talked to you about Jesus. You know, a person that crossed the street, the person that your neighbor that knocks your door, that say to you, hey, I want to tell you something, Jesus loves you. My wife has a very interesting story. During her teenager's year, using drugs and all the crazy things that you do, she was going to, in Brazil, the carnival, it's a big thing. It's not like playing with kids. Carnival in Brazil is the real thing. You know, people go, drugs and alcohol and everything. She was going to this club where they're going to be the whole night. And there was this young gal There's probably most of the people were making fun of her. She just stopped my wife and she said, Jesus loves you. This was about 25 years ago. My wife never saw this gal in her life anymore. But this gal changes my wife's life because that's stuck in her mind. Jesus loves you. The whole effects of drugs were gone. The whole night, everyone was having fun and she was thinking, Jesus loves me. Jesus. And then a few months later, another person came and said, hey, Jesus loves you. And she recognized both and gave her life to Jesus, went into the mission, and hundreds of people is being touched by that. But by this young girl, like just 25 years ago, that it was another place for her to go as a Christian. Christian people doesn't go to Carnival in Brazil because it's scary. You will see things that you don't want to see it. But she was there changing eternity of people. So this is what it's like. The second takeout we can take it from this is he said, remember him now. Not later, not just 5 minutes before you go, but remember him now. He said, remember your Creator in the days of your youth, before the days of trouble comes and the years approach them when you say, I find no pleasure in them. So it's interesting. He's saying, now enjoy life. And it's interesting even to say to a young person, 15, 16, and say, do you know, and there's no, how be Christian. If you have a teenager in your house, you know what I'm saying. And how to be Christian now. And then you say, don't go out and collect all the bad stuff you can collect outside of God and then come back later when you were like 30 or 40 years old, when you have to deal with all the things that you get. And he's saying, no, remember now. Because then the trouble come, the days of trouble come, it's going to be too late. Just enjoying life now with God.
Listen to how he describes the days of trouble. Worship he can come up. I find no pleasure in them those years. Before the sun and the light and the moon and the stars grow dark and the clouds return after the rain. Listen to the imagery here. When the keepers of the house tremble and the strong men stoop, when the grinders cease because they are few, you've lost your teeth, you're eating baby food again. And those looking through the windows grow dim. I have 3 sets of glasses now. When the doors to the street are closed and the sound of grinding fades, gosh, I can only hear out of one ear. When people rise up at the sound of birds, I used to sleep through the night, but all their songs grow faint. When people are afraid of heights and of danger in the streets. When the almond tree blossoms and my hair grows gray, and the grasshopper drags itself along and desire is no longer stirred. No problem with my libido there. People go to their eternal home and mourners go about the streets. Again, he's kind of like ending this on this like depressing note. Not at all. He said, no, that's the sure end. Remember him before the silver cord is severed and the golden bowl is broken. He says, now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. For God will bring every deed into judgment, every hidden thing, whether it is good or evil. You know the leading cause of suicide among young people, 15 to 23 years of age? Leading cause of death is suicide. You'd think, that just seems counterintuitive, doesn't it? Like, you've got everything to live for. Your whole life is before you. Your body is strong and healthy. You haven't really experienced any of the tough things of life yet. You'd think you'd be full of optimism. It's the third leading cause of death among our young people today. It's the sign that I've lost hope in something beyond this life that I'm looking at. He says, remember him. Remember him. If you forget him, and all you have left is this life. And it's a despairing thing. We weren't meant to live without hope. So what's your pursuit today? Happiness, perfect mate, perfect body, perfect salary, the high-paying job, the dream house, storybook family, pinnacle of your career. He's not saying all those things are not in the pursuit, but ultimately, all those things, without remembering who gives it to you and who's waiting for you, can make those things meaningless.
And the good news is that it's not that things are bad. The good news is God has made us for something bigger than that. It's more. I don't know if you have looked and thought about, God, is there more than what I'm living now? Is there any hope? Or there's any the why question? God, why I am here? And I think that is the thing. When he say fear God, it's not to be scared of God and say, God, you gonna like you're a mad God. If I choose the wrong choice, it is not. It's him saying, if you add me, if you know I am in the picture. Like last night, my son was crying. He was like, I'm scared of you die. I'm scared that mom is gonna die. And he was crying. And I say, do you know, why don't you ask Jesus where he is on all this situation, all the fear, and give your fear to him? And he stopped crying and he looked at me and then he say, can I do that? I say, yes. You don't need to carry the fear, because even though you go through all these things, he will be with you. So that is what we have to. The fear of God is him with us. And we know in all the life question, I don't need to answer by myself. I can have him counsel me to the answers that I need to give to him.
We're going to take communion, but this is a wonderful time to be alive. As our culture slides towards despair, and I don't wish that on our culture, but that's where it's headed, we have the opportunity to share the reason for the hope that's within us. That's an amazing opportunity. You have the best product in the world. It's called hope. And people may tell you they don't want it, but I guarantee you they can't live without it. So trust God with that, would you? Trust God with the eternal word of hope. You'd be surprised what he would do in you and through you with that. We're going to come and we're going to take communion and finish, as is our custom. As you reach for these elements, we're going to grab them and sit down and we'll take together. But what you're reaching for these elements are 3,000 years old. They've been around since the Old Testament. Jesus brought them in this new sacrifice, this new covenant, bread and wine. But as you hold them in your hands, this is what you're reaching for. You're reaching for eternal hope. So come and take, and then we'll take together as we finish.